I'm going to recognize now Mr. Williams, Representative Williams, for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses for being here. We certainly cover a broad swath of transportation here, so thank you for your time. I had the benefit of attending the Wharton School and studying operations under Patrick Harker and Professor Marshall Fisher, if you've ever come across either of them. So I have a slight understanding of, queuing theory and OR models and some of the things, I think, the tools that you use. But more importantly, I played the beer game. And before my colleagues here think it's that beer game, it's actually the supply chain beer game, which I think perhaps many of you have played or members of your team has. And the idea of it is that in any kind of supply chain across multiple distribution points, if you don't have visibility and transparency in data, that you make some very egregious decisions and assumptions about supply and demand and capacity and utilization and all those things. And I notice in the petroleum industry, they have the Energy Information Administration, a little bit different function. I know it's a commodity, it's much simpler, but the industry cooperates in ways that shares data and visibility around supplies, storage, transport, all of these kinds of things that seem to make things move a little bit simpler. And it's really an open-ended question. Are you aware of any in industry or federally sponsored clearinghouses or brokerages of real-time or time-relevant data, whatever that is, if it's daily or weekly or hourly, whatever it is, that is giving visibility of supply chain information that makes your jobs easier, that makes you more efficient? Is there a role to be played by the federal government to broker this kind of exchange of information that helps you do your job better? Is that something you've considered, or is there something I should be aware of and I can look into?
I'm happy to take a first crack at that. In the rail industry, actually, my organization is a primary clearinghouse for data along those lines. We have a wholly owned subsidiary called RailLink in Cary, North Carolina. That is the kind of the IT backbone of information sharing and information transfer, because we are an interconnected network and exchange traffic, exchange business across lines so much that tracking that's critically important. Also, we're required to submit a vast amount of reporting data to our economic regulator, the Surface Transportation Board, and all that data is generated in-house in my shop. I'll also say there's a pretty significant push recognizing that the Amazonification of the world has occurred. And, when I order a pizza, I want to know when the pepperoni's going on it before it goes in the oven. And so there's a lot of work in telematics and real-time sensor tracking, et cetera, in the industry. There's a joint company that's been stood up with railroads, short lines, class ones, car owners, car leasers, really working to make headway there. So there's a lot of efforts afoot.
I understand, like with rolling stock and maybe to manage capacity across a rail line, again, not my area of expertise. But what about like bill of lading? What about the actual flow of materials that allows, companies to communicate better? And again, if you've played the beer game, you know what I'm talking about, is that, if you have better data transparency, it really makes a huge difference, in how things flow. And again, if this doesn't exist, if it's something we should look at, or that you think has obvious barriers, like no one would do that, then let me know. So,
at the risk of dominating the conversation, that is an issue we ran into during some of the container supply chain challenges from port to truck or port to rail to inland yard and to final destination of warehouses. A lot of times your contracts with the ocean carrier, and you don't know who the beneficial cargo owner is or what's in the box, and so you're kind of playing a guess game about where you're positioning your boxes in the yard, and just some simple knowledge transfer. I know our folks have said would allow for an easier transition of product.
Yeah, I agree. There's information there. It's just become the sharing of that information for competitive reasons or whatever it is that likely to occur? It's not occurring today, but there's a lot of data out there. It's just not being exchanged.
Thank you. And maybe the government could be a good faith broker in some way of data, but thank you.